Yeah, I'm shy to say this because this is a podcast and it's going to be like in history forever. And I'd like to, okay, as an earmark to look back on this. Last year we closed at 300,000 in revenue, and we're on track. Our next goal is to hit 1 million by the end of the year. Fingers crossed if everything goes, yeah.
At Foundr, we're leading an educational revolution and training the entrepreneurs of tomorrow. In this series, we're talking to our own students to discover how they're building the businesses of their dreams. These are real, everyday people who have made it happen. Now, before we jump in, our lawyers have told us to tell you this. Of course, we can't guarantee you'll have the results like some of our stories we're about to share in this show. And as you know, with any business, it's a lot of hard work in addition to completing any online course. And with that said, welcome to From Zero to Foundr. Hey guys, Molly here. I'm the community manager for Foundr magazine, and welcome to the series From Zero to Foundr. I'm super excited to sit down with one of our Start and Scale students, Myey Moens, and founder of Theo and Brom, which specializes in Belgian chocolate. Before taking the course, Myey didn't even have a company, and now she's on track to making $1 million this year. This is such an inspiring story, so let's just get into it. Hey Myey, thank you so much for joining me today and speaking to me about your journey and as well as everything to do with your business. I guess the first question, the most important question, why not tell me a little bit about yourself, your business, and where you're located?
Okay. First, thanks for having me, Molly. I'm always thrilled to be part of anything Foundr. I am Myey Moens, and for those of you that I have not had the privilege to meet, I am a Filipino-American entrepreneur who is now based in Ghent, Belgium. So my Foundr journey started in 2018 when I moved here for marriage. I met my husband while traveling as a digital nomad, and we basically traveled for about another year before settling down and choosing his city to be our home base. And I was leaving a life of being into sales and marketing for the past decade. So I basically uprooted myself and found myself in a country where I don't understand the language. And I just knew that there was no way in my capacity that I would be at a professional level, even if I learned it. So here they speak Dutch and French and German. So like English is not even in the list of official languages. Of course they speak English, but it's not an official language. So I guess that's harder for me to find, let's say, a job, to settle down and find roots to begin again a new career. And I was just searching one day on the internet, like, what could I possibly do while I find my way here in my new life? And I just knew that since I had, a knack for sales and marketing, that maybe I could just go down that rabbit hole and see what I find. And thankfully, I found the course of Start and Scale. And I also found a friend there, like somebody I really knew who also took the course. And that was it for me. So Theo and Brom was born. It's basically a fusion of two cultures, Filipino and Belgian, and everything that has to do with our chocolates. So since then, it's been an amazing journey, and 2021, we're still here.
Such an inspiring story. I think, I don't know how you could do it, uproot your life and move somewhere, especially not knowing the language. So that's very, very amazing. I'm just blown away by that. But I guess, so you mentioned how you're almost like a digital nomad. How long were you in sales and marketing? Did you work for another company, or you were kind of having your own business doing that?
It was half and half. I'd say I was more of an independent contractor for an exclusive personal care brand. At first it was just skincare, and then it extended into health and wellness. So I'd say it's generally personal care. And I did that for about 10 years. I was one of the first team leaders to expand into social media and understand how, it's so powerful to speak that language, how to sell on social. And that was also a stepping stone for me to finally, branch out into my own business and apply all the skills and things that I've learned from that But of course, I still needed a lot of things to polish, if you may. Yeah, there.
That makes complete sense. And I think also having that experience, like you said, would help anyone kind of have the drive and the, I guess, pull towards creating your own business, which is amazing. So you moved to Belgium how long ago?
In 2018, summer of 2018.
Amazing. And did you start trying to apply for jobs there in sales and marketing and you kind of had that difficulty trying to get those jobs like you mentioned? Or was it kind of like, this is going to be a new start for me, I need to try and branch out and discover something?
It's actually a very good question, Molly, because I didn't even reach the application process because, again, the language, yeah, that was just like the major barrier. So I'm like, I don't think I'm qualified because it's so intimidating to see, language must be fluent in Dutch and French, preferably both, and English. I'm like, okay, I only took off one from the list and it's not even the priority. So it's like, great, I won't even try applying. So yeah, that was difficult. And it was confronting because being very independent and career driven before I settled down, suddenly I just felt useless or, like, I hope I could, build something again from scratch. And I think it takes immense courage and like accepting what is and believing that you can for what will be.
Of course, yeah, I can only imagine. And from that, I guess, not even getting to the application course, what stood out to you about the Start and Scale course against any others that you probably could have stumbled across Googling?
I like the idea that despite it being based elsewhere, of course, I knew that it wasn't European, it wasn't American. And then through a friend, I saw that, wow, it is down south in Australia, down under in Australia. So the remote factor attracted me. It means that, okay, it is not sensitive to geography or location, and I can still do this. And formerly being a digital nomad, I knew that that was very important for me. The ability to have independence, location independence, and remote work. Second, it was through my friend's testimonial. And they were, I think, part of the video that I saw when I was checking out the Start and Scale course. They're a couple, Rachel from Gammon Traveler. And yeah, so that was the thing that made it for me.
Incredible. And I guess prior to this, had you ever heard of our instructor Greta before?
Yes, through Rachel as well. She said that this mentor of hers is amazing, and she has scaled several businesses, not just one, into multi-million-dollar businesses. And I'm like, sold. And yeah, she's a woman. Let's do this. It gives all the more, empowerment to what I wanted to build. I didn't really know what I wanted to build back then, but that's just a shining example. So
definitely. And I guess you just touched upon it then. You didn't have an idea when you first kind of started the course. What and how did you even develop your idea to create Theo and Brom?
It was, I guess, a mix of intuition and just following your gut as to where it led you. I must admit that I did not have a passion for sweets or anything, like desserts before I launched the brand. My husband keeps telling me, don't say that, that's gonna hurt you. But I'm like, but that's the real story. All my friends were like, huh, a chocolate brand? You don't even eat dessert. Well, now I do. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. But because of, you put education and structure and match it with the intuition that you have, understanding that, this could probably be a product that touches on many of the things that I also go through, the nostalgia, missing home, the idea of maximizing what you have in your environment, Belgium being known for chocolates, And the Philippines having a very strong tradition as well in terms of chocolates, because the cocoa trees that are planted in the Philippines actually came from Mexico during the galleon trade from way, way, way back. So, those all coming into play just, created that light bulb moment where I was like, I think this is worth a try. And it's a beautiful story. My husband's Belgian, I'm Filipina. We're bringing together, all things about chocolate from the Philippines and Belgium. Let's see how it's going to work. So there you go.
And I guess I find it very interesting because you did say that you're not very, I guess, a dessert-oriented person, or you're not into sweets and things like that. Did you find then the process of actually creating this hybrid between, I guess, two different tastes, or at least two different countries, really challenging?
Right. Of course it was challenging because, one, I was an outsider looking in, and, it was funny when I was trying to pitch the idea to manufacturers who could probably help me create the chocolate. Oh, that's my baby. I have a newborn. He's 4 months old. They were like, who are you and what are you trying to do? And they turned me down politely, but I knew it was quite a long shot, and it took one person to believe in my idea, and it just led me to the people who helped me develop the recipe and our brand and our product. So I guess that's also one thing. It was just my relentlessness and my resourcefulness that allowed me to launch eventually, even if I'm not the chef making the products, even if I'm not the expert in chocolate. What helped me so much is to outsource these things, and outsource smartly, wherein, it didn't really take a lot of money in the beginning, because I know many people would be like, but probably you had the funds to outsource. I'm like, no, it was just, good old-fashioned networking and just believing in your idea and having somebody pitch in to believe in it until it made money. Yeah.
Of course. Wow. I guess I wouldn't even know where to start. So I can imagine, from, like you mentioned, an outsider looking in, it would have been very daunting. But how did you kind of, cross your T's and dot your I's when it came to who you needed in your manufacturing process to actually have your vision come to life?
First, it started, of course, with a very general and broad search. So online, dear old Google, and then you type in the keywords and see whatever you find, and then you just narrow the path from there. An interesting story was that, so I created this spreadsheet of all the possible manufacturers, and I just vetted them according to what they said on their website, and I really didn't know. And I was pitching through email, through their info at or contact at emails, and I didn't even know who I was speaking to because I didn't have a network here. And finally, so that spreadsheet was alphabetically sorted, and everybody said no, probably more than 30, I forget now how many people I sent that email to. And the last one that replied and actually said yes had letter Z as the beginning of their company name. So it's like Zoto. And finally, she became my cacao scientist. So she's one of the lead cacao scientists in the world. And she recently came from the Philippines. This was totally a coincidence. And she was like, did you find me through the Filipino network of, cacao producers there? I'm like, no, I had no idea that you were there. And she was like, and I know exactly what you're trying to make, because with her visit from the Philippines, she got to try the traditional chocolates there, the very raw and rustic tablea, which is our core product. And then she's like, I think I know exactly who to speak with so that we can manufacture your prototype. I'm like, awesome, let's do this. And that's another woman. So it's like, woo, Women's Month. So it's very exciting to think back on these nuggets of wisdom and like memories where women empowering women and all that.
It's crazy how everything just aligns and works together when you have a vision and you're so passionate towards it. And I think that's always like a common theme. And I know a lot of people listening, it's it's nice when you have passion towards something, but it definitely also helps because if you're going to dedicate your life to it, like you have and what you plan to, you know, starting and uprooting everything to have this success over in a different country, it's very interesting.
Exactly.
Very, very interesting.
Yes.
And I guess that kind of leads me on to my next question. I was going to ask, I guess it's very unknown, I guess, having the hybrid of these two different confections. Is it typically your main product? You mentioned it before. Is it a sweet or is it a bitter chocolate? Having her, your cacao scientist, knowing, I guess, the history behind that product, she knew how to nail the taste, or did you have familiarity with it too?
I had familiarity with the raw product that we had from the Philippines because, you know, that's just unadulterated. That's from the cacao bean, you know, they grind it. It's not even fermented. And then you can make like a good cup of cocoa from it. But Zoe, who's my lead cacao scientist, so she's an expert in that, and she knows which beans to source. So just like wine, you know, the taste of it, the taste profile varies from bean to bean and from where it's grown. Yeah, she knows all of that. So I just leave that to her. And she knew the craft chocolate maker who had the skill and expertise to actually experiment with her so that we could create that product. So that was the prototype. And originally that was the only thing I was intending to produce, you know, and scale from there so that we can grow and see, you know, just see if we can tap into other markets, other countries to expand, where the Filipino population was pretty big in terms of the immigrant population as well. However, COVID happened. So I'm like fast forwarding from 2018 to 2020 was there. And then we were coming back from a vacation from Los Angeles, my husband and I, and that was right before the lockdown. And then we realized, oh my goodness, yeah, how are we gonna continue my business? He has a different business altogether. How are we gonna continue my business if our largest market was the United States and we couldn't bring the chocolates from here to there anymore? The export costs just, were skyrocketing. It was 3 times what we originally paid for. So it wasn't profitable anymore to continue on with that setup, plus the lockdowns, plus all those, difficulties that everybody faced during 2020. So we were able to pivot. I was able to pivot by connecting with a friend from my old networks in the Philippines. And we produced an entirely new product using our base chocolate. So we ended up having cakes. And I'd say, this was our maverick product that saved our brand. And so through the course of 6 months, from June to December of 2020, when, you know, I was about to throw in the towel, I'm like, whatever, you know, COVID, I'll just, call it quits. It's fine. You know, I had no control over the pandemic. We were able to 5x our revenue, and it was through cakes and another product called the Goo Goo Jar, which is made like a spread, a gooey spread from our base chocolate, but it's the first tablea spread as well. So now all our operations, since COVID is still not really, you know, gone in most parts of the world, our operations are now fully in the Philippines, and I still am able to manage it remotely. I have a team there now, and several partner companies that do outsourcing for us, fulfillment, warehousing, the whole supply chain, and a line kitchen, a partner that has a line kitchen that produces our goods. So we're not just into chocolate now, we're also into pastries. So we're very, very happy.
Wow, what a story. I feel like I love that COVID's made you flip it and it's just 10x your company. That's amazing. But I'm really interested, actually, before we jump into your other products, I'd love to know more about, you know, you said that how you've got all your manufacturing in the Philippines now. How has that changed? Like, what did you start off with compared to where you are now? Because I think that contrast would just be so interesting for everyone listening.
I started with, so this is fun because I'd like to talk about how small the scale was when I started. So our batch of beans to create our first prototype was just 20 kilos. And that's just like, one suitcase when you travel. It's too funny. And it was even hand carried by the bean supplier who normally exports in metric tons, but they were traveling for the chocolate festival here in Europe. And then Zoe, my cacao scientist, was like, hey, can you just carry this type of beans in your suitcase for us? And then they're like, yeah, sure, whatever. And it was 20 kilos. And I remember, I didn't even have enough funds to basically fund that. And it was my husband, giving me the base capital to run my first experimental batch to see if this formulation or this recipe would work. And I remember our first sale was so small, like we were launching the first 100 boxes. And to me, that was already a lot. And yeah, so, and it's good that I didn't know how small we were, I guess. I was just really thrilled with the progress that I was making. And for anybody starting their entrepreneurship journey, what's important is that you're progressing from one point to another. And it helps that I don't really look around in terms of the competition. And this is one thing that I probably trained myself to do even before I jumped into my own entrepreneurship journey. It's just more of, this tactic that I learned for sales and marketing during my stint at my former career is just focus on you and, beat your personal best. Instead of like looking around at what others are able to accomplish. They of course have their own journey, they have their own story. And sometimes you may be empowered, but many times you may also feel, lacking in many ways. And that's just taken out of context if you start comparing yourself with the progress of others. So for me, I just realized how small I was looking back. And it's cool because back then I felt very big already. And I think that's important because you feel full.
At Foundr, 99% of our content is free. Today's episode is only made possible by our incredible student community, from our magazine subscribers to the entrepreneurs enrolling in our course programs. If you are thinking of finally starting your own business, make sure to check out the exact free training that led today's guests to where they are now. Head to foundr.com/e-commerce training or follow the link in the show notes. It's all about celebrating the little wins because some people have the idea and they get stuck at that point and then they don't progress any further, whereas one sale, let alone producing 100 bags is amazing. So I guess you mentioned obviously you've grown from 100 bags or that first 20 kilos. What was the timeline? Was it 20 kilos 1 month and then was that consistent for a year, or did you grow? How did that happen?
First year, of course, it wasn't that consistent. So it was like first 100, that was bootstrapping that whole thing, are you going to buy our first boxes? And I hope you like it, fingers crossed, because you also don't know if, people would love the formulation. It's an entirely new product. We used straightforward ingredients. However, you don't know if they'd like it. And we've also received feedback that I don't like the chocolate that much. So yeah, it's okay. It's taste, And then through the first few months after that launch, we were able to fund our small crowdfunding campaign. And that was for me to open our operations in the United States. So just, $10,000, basically the objective of that was to create that supply chain. And then from there, use that capital to continue on supplying to the US. So it was up and down. Some months were not so good. Black Friday was upcoming. So that was generally always okay for many e-commerce companies, whether you're big or small, as long as you participate, you're just going to catch some of the market there. But we had a major win during our first year when we closed our first corporate account. And it was a Belgian corporation that just, I guess, got fascinated by the idea. We sent our pitch in April, and then we heard back from them in November when they were about to send out the rewards for their customers, I think. So that was like our first bulk order that, yeah, I've never seen. Again, looking back, it's very small, but I've never seen that much, zeros, I guess, in my bank account here in Belgium. It's too funny. And that was exciting. So from there, it built up more capital for me, and it helped us as well to be in a more stable financial position. And when your finances are good, then it allows you finally to have better decisions and faster decisions, if you will. But of course, I waited about a year and a half before, we could have that first breakthrough. And patience is always rewarded, I'd say, as long as you keep going, no matter what.
Great advice. And I agree with that statement. Very, very true. And how long did it take you to actually raise the 10K that you needed from funding?
I only put 2 weeks for that Kickstarter crowdfunding. I was like, if this is going to happen, it has to be quick, and it's not even a big amount. So I just need enough people to believe in it to just jump in and pitch it. So 2 weeks and 10K. So
pretty amazing.
And
yeah.
It was an all or nothing thing with Kickstarter. So I was like, okay, if this is going to happen, I want people to understand that it's all or nothing is all. So we went for Kickstarter.
And I'm sure it would have been nice knowing that people that were actually donating to that were supporting your brand and your idea, which probably would have given you more motivation in turn to keep creating your product.
Exactly. And it was, just friends telling friends and telling more friends. So of course it started with your inner circle, and then they tell their network. And then, even our local Filipino news based in Belgium picked it up as well. So that helped in terms of mileage. So yay, we were very thrilled with the help of the community.
No, which is incredible. And I guess it also kind of brings me back around. You mentioned getting your first corporate, client for your business. And that was within the first year. How did you kind of market to them? Were you just sending out pitches? Were you using any other marketing channels to help promote your brand?
At the moment, no, I didn't have the budget for Facebook ads. So back then I didn't have it yet. And this one was still through the organic network. I also, made it a point to intentionally find new connections, new leads, not only to convert them into, a client, but just to establish my network in Belgium, which I knew was a very important thing as my former career in sales and marketing. It was built on, creating your network and expanding your network. So I first also applied to several incubators and accelerator groups, and we got into Belgium's largest accelerator group. So it's called Started at KBC. And then, we were one of the women-founded businesses that got in during that cohort of ours. So we're very happy to be part of that too. And it taught me as well, to audit my business. And again, it's a confronting moment where you can't do this alone. It's important for you to have a team of co-founders or a team to help you get from where you are to where you want to go. And it just exposed the many vulnerabilities of my current setup as a young entrepreneur and a young business owner. So it's very helpful for people to always network and
And I love that.
Those connections that will boost not only yourself, but allow you to boost the by contributing to that community as well.
And you mentioned networking is something that's very, very prominent in your journey and your business growth. Did you solely network online, considering there was kind of that language barrier in between maybe some of your closest people in Belgium?
Yeah, so mostly when I would do my searches, it would only turn up, of course, the results that had English text on it. So we're lucky that Belgium is a very, I'd say, diverse community in terms of expats because of the EU. You know, it's where Brussels is, and I mean, the EU is in Brussels, and our city as well, Ghent, is a student city. So there are several, nationalities all around, and it's easy to walk into a shop and just speak English. Only that English is not an official language here. That's why it makes it difficult in terms of the professional sense. But in terms of communities, you know, yes, you could easily find your bubbles if you really search. So it has to be an intentional search, of course. And for me, I had to be the one reaching out because I'm the one who moved here. So I totally understand that I should be creating those spaces for me and finding them if they already exist.
Yes, I find that very interesting. And I guess bringing it back to kind of what we were talking about earlier, how, you know, you found Zoe, who is your cacao, I guess, chemist. You've networked with a bunch of people that I'm sure gave you very valuable advice. How did you kind of, even as simple as thinking of your branding and your name of your company for something that might not be, I guess, you're not really sweet orientated, how did that all come up? How did you discover that?
Branding, of course, again, with intuition, go back to the basics and just follow where you feel it will lead you to that light bulb moment. So I just use this mantra of, if we are bridging roots from Belgium and from the Philippines, it led us to, why not, you know, make a spin out of the root name of cacao, which is Theobroma cacao. And that's where Theo and Brom came from. So also from the root name and there. Wow. And it worked. It worked.
No, it's very catchy, and it's something that's very unique. And I think the thing that definitely sparked it for me is kind of thinking, you know, you don't associate chocolate with that name, but when you actually learn the history of it, it's very fascinating, and it probably inspires a lot more people to kind of realize how much research that you've put into this product as well.
That's true. Whenever they ask, like, who's Theo? And then I'm like, it's not really a person. It came from the root name of the cacao plant, Theobroma cacao. And then they're like, oh, wow, that is so brilliant. I'm like, yeah, right. It's one of my small wins. It's like, that's the cool brand.
No, I love it. And I think it's amazing that you've been able to scale so much. And I guess you mentioned how you've got multiple SKUs now. Do you want to walk me through the process? Did you implement your start and scale learnings for each new SKU that you thought of, or each new product that you thought of?
Well, I guess when I started my e-commerce store through Shopify, you just, you know, hone that skill, because I don't really outsource, you know, fixing up the store, creating, I started to create my own graphics at the beginning. And then of course, when you have extra capital, as the revenue grows, we get to outsource that as well. But when we had our cakes, of course I applied it, but it felt more like second nature, because we've been doing it for about a year, 2 years, close to 2 years before we were forced to pivot. So I just kept, you know, going back to some of the courses, the specific chapters in Start and Scale, whenever I needed reviews on, like, oh, how did you do that again? What website was that again, where you found those really cool designers? You know, those little tidbits that helped. And by the time we were forced to pivot and create new products, then it was already, you know, basically part of that chain in our workflow. And having access to that is always golden, because if and when I will be training people that will take over my part, which is actually in process already, you know, like I'm training people to take over several tasks that I used to oversee, then, you know, you could just easily transfer that knowledge to them And I basically learned that in the comforts of my own living room, which is cool. Like pre-lockdown, I actually learned all I did as if I were in lockdown, because that's how I started as an entrepreneur.
There's no better way when you're stuck at home. You might as well expand the mind and learn something new, which I think is very incredible. But I guess, what exact methods do you remember from the Start and Scale course that you applied to your business to help you actually succeed and, I guess, grow to where you are today?
The branding course that Greta was teaching. And instead of, I specifically remember my process after I watched those videos is to visit the brands that she actually created and see if there's a pattern, and, try to find the similarities and what insights can you pull through by observing an actual working e-commerce website that this mentor is teaching us. And of course, also looking at the other examples of the Start and Scale students. And then you see a pattern emerging where, it's a very clear way of communicating what your brand represents. It's you understanding that this brand connects with your audience, and so on and so forth. It's not just about nice colors and a cool sounding name and, like a trendy website to boot. Of course, those help, but all those elements have to come together by having a deeper understanding of what you're sharing to the world and who you're speaking to in that world of yours. Yeah.
It would definitely be a different world to what you're used to, that's for sure. Even having those sales and marketing backgrounds, applying it to your own, I guess, baby business would be so daunting. So I can only imagine.
Yes. Wow. I mean, a lot of it was unlearning. And It's sometimes harder that you have a background on those areas, and coming into something that you've never tried and you're a total newbie, you also bring in so much baggage of, oh, this is how it's been done. And, oh, apparently it doesn't apply to this. So you also have to be very open to, unlearn some concepts that worked before, but are not specifically applicable to this new venture of yours.
Which I think is actually very valuable advice, because a lot of people, they might be stuck in their ways and think that, why aren't I succeeding? Or anyone listening to this thinking, I have X knowledge, why isn't it working? But that's a great sentiment to kind of be like, sometimes you have to unlearn things to kind of learn how to adapt. And I guess, like you mentioned, in a COVID world, everything's ever changing. So I guess, what results did you achieve by taking the course? You mentioned how you were doing 20 kilos of cacao back X amount, 2018. How is that compared to now? Are you turning over 100 kilos? What's the difference?
So our record month, we did, oh wow, I don't even think in kilos now. So if we're gonna compute like the raw chocolate that we use, we did, like a metric ton in a month. So that's amazing. From 20 kilos to a metric ton.
That's almost like unbelievable. That is such a feat only in like a couple of years. Like, congratulations. That's such an achievement.
Thank you.
But
yeah, I was like computing, is that accurate? Yeah, it is. 1,000 kilos. Yeah. Okay, a metric ton. There you go.
And I guess that's almost like a pat on your back for realizing like 100 kilos, 20 kilos to now a ton is just insane. And I guess in terms of like when you first started with your revenue, how much were you selling back then to, if you don't mind me asking now, is it, you mentioned 5X, is it still 5X? Is it 10X?
I'm very conservative in terms of my revenue numbers, of course. But what we used to do in a year, we managed to do in a month during 2020. And wow. That's only counting from June to December, because we were basically not operating from the lockdown in March till like May, and then slowly starting to ease in. So, I mean, my revenue back then was really small as well. So, like some people would think, okay, what you did in a year, but that could be like $100 and then suddenly you're doing 1,000. we closed. Yeah, we're on track to surpass. Yeah, I'm shy to say this because this is a podcast and it's going to be like in history forever. And I'd like to, okay, as an earmark to look back on this. Last year we closed at 300,000 in revenue, and we're on track. Our next goal is to hit 1 million by the end of the year. Fingers crossed if everything goes. Yeah.
I'm like so amazed by that. And I think it's like what you mentioned, everyone listening, it's a learning curve. And I think you're an inspiration to go from, you know, one place to then a couple years later having this success. And I think it's definitely a pat on the back to you and a testament to your hard work. So definitely don't shortcut yourself with, you know, these goals, because it is incredible. And I'm sure a lot of people listening will just be amazed at your story as well. But I guess from this growth, you mentioned Facebook ads now. Is that a channel that you're going down to try and help you get to that goal?
That channel definitely helped us boost our business in ways I couldn't imagine. So just to put it a little bit of context, my husband is a funnel hacker and a digital marketer. And he's been pressing me for the past 2 years to like, let's do Facebook ads. Let's do Facebook ads. And I'm like, no, I'm still going organic, you know, social selling. Filipinos are everywhere around the world. We got this. And he's like, no, come on. So during the COVID pivot, we were also in a different space where he was like, look, you have nothing to lose here anymore, Myey. You know, his business was not affected because he sells digital products. But for me, you know, who produces, manufactures, and creates this whole supply chain, he's like, you have nothing to lose. Here, let's do a bet. I'll put in the first campaign for your business. If it doesn't work, then let's call it quits. And if it does, then, you know, I told you so. And true enough, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. And it had to work before my very eyes, because again, that's one of the things that I had to unlearn. It was like a stronghold where I was just so sold that Facebook ads would not work for my brand, specifically for chocolate, specifically for marketing in the Philippines. I don't know, that whole combination. I had this, conviction, and I was utterly convinced that it will not work for that whole combination. And he's like, no, you have to learn this new thing. You have to be open to new things. And I'm happy to be wrong. And since then, yes, we have launched several campaigns, which again helped our brand scale even faster.
Which is incredible. But I guess, you know, it was a lot of pressure on his shoulders to do well with that. But I'm very glad it worked out for you and him in that way. But I guess, do you use any other marketing channels like email marketing? Is that something that you heavily push, or Instagram or social media?
Social media, since I had my newborn, so my little boy was born in November, I have always been the one hands-on on our social media. And since he was born, I've taken a step back a little bit. Just to be very hands-on during his first 6 months. So our social media is on pause. And since my husband, again, has been pushing me to explore and learn email marketing, and then now I'm seeing again its magic. So that's one channel that I have been more active on, pursuing, you know, more, I wouldn't say campaigns specifically, but touching base with my audience and our existing customers and those whom engaged with our brand and allowed us to send them communications. And it's been very powerful. So, you know, they know as well that I just gave birth, and they basically understand this whole story coming from the COVID pivot, that we're based in Belgium and all that. So I'd say there's a small community that are fans of the brand, and it's beautiful. Each time you send them communications, a lot of them reply, and of course it converts. And at the end of the day, in terms of the marketing and entrepreneur perspective, the bottom line is also not forgotten there.
And I think it's really nice that they know you personally and you have that personal touch on your brand too, because I feel like in this day, having that connection to the CEO and who's behind all is also a really nice touch. So it's great that you ventured into email marketing and you have explored, but I guess, you mentioned COVID and you mentioned going into pastries, and was it your goo goo jars?
Goo goo jar, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess with all that happening in the last, year because of COVID, what's next for you and your business?
Well, we are actually transitioning to be a scale up. It's funny because before we got in touch, a few days back, I was already studying what's the difference of a startup and a scale up, and what are the things that you would need to audit and to like improve on in order for you to fall under that category. So at this current time frame from March until April, we're just gonna study all the aspects and departments of the business in order for us to just operate on a larger scale and hopefully double our operations again and double our revenue again. So not really introducing new product lines specifically, but more strengthening what we already have, because I'd say, after that 2.5, 3 years, we have a good brand with a good product market fit, and just, blasting through and creating even more revenue with what we could say are our golden goose. There you go.
No, and I think it's incredible. And I guess working towards wrapping up, just briefly for someone who might not even know, okay, how do I understand when it's time to scale up? What was that kind of moment for you where you were like, okay, I've aced being a startup, what's the next step? Was it I've got this many products, or was it I've got this many people in my team?
No, it actually came with a crisis. So this is a beautiful and funny story. At least now it's resolved. When we hit record numbers a few months back, we realized that, the scale we were trying to operate on, the team was just so small, so inexperienced, and our systems just didn't hack it. And that's how we raked up our first 1-star reviews, not because of the product, but because, the shipping was delayed. So many things, and then I just was zoning out and thinking of Mark Zuckerberg saying, move fast and break things. And I'm like, I guess I got to that point when I realized so many angry customers because they're not getting their product on time. And until we reached that level, and then we also realized that, oh my goodness, we could actually operate at that level already, but we can't continue on at this level of systems. I'd say it's very Jurassic when you want to be, operating and giving the best customer service to your customers from end to end, not only a good product experience, but also a seamless delivery and, unboxing and all that. So that was, about a quarter ago. And then, so starting January, February, March, we've been just trying to slowly pull off what we're operating at, the level we're operating on. And then finally at the last 2 weeks before Easter breaks, that's when we're going to just do an internal audit of, okay, these are the changes that we need to implement. So everything has been on beta since 2021 began because of that crisis. And we're thankful, we learn more when we lose than when we win, I'd say. And those 1-star reviews really, leveled up our commitment to do better. Because to me, I cried when I read my first 1-star reviews. And it's just part of every founder's journey, of course. You can't please everybody, and there will come a point when, you just have to learn from that.
I think that's great insight because, obviously no one wants 1-star reviews, but I guess when you're at a certain capacity, you know, you need to start thinking, okay, how can I better my community? How can I make that user experience 10x and just so much better? And I think that's really interesting, and I'm sure a lot of people will value that insight that you just shared. But I guess working towards wrapping up, when you first discovered Start and Scale, you moved to Belgium. Did you ever think that you would be where you are right now?
No, not at all. That's what makes it very exciting. And for me, what should be constant is your desire to learn and educate yourself with new things so that you can adapt, especially to, you know, new environments or circumstances that you would never have expected to happen, just like COVID, you know. And because of that being part of your discipline, always learning, always educating yourself, always understanding how you can adapt no matter what circumstances. It's going to be difficult, you know. I've shed a lot of tears and, you know, thrown tantrums because of the difficulties, but because I made it my value to always have education first and foremost, to upgrade myself for constant and never-ending improvement, then it's always helped. And Start and Scale is, a course that I, of course, swear by. I'm a product of it. And even before Start and Scale was there, those little quotes from Foundr's Instagram in the wee days when you guys were also just starting, those got me through my sales and marketing career formerly. And yeah, I was telling my husband, like, you have no idea, you have no idea who just emailed me, and I'm going to be on a podcast that I was listening to before. So he's like, right, really? I'm like, yeah, so cool.
Crazy how it comes full circle in the end. And we're very, very lucky to have you here. And I'm blessed to be able to talk to you about this journey. But I guess the last thing that I will ask you before we wrap up is, if someone was sitting in your shoes where you were in 2018, being on the fence, what advice would you give to them to just, you know, I guess start? What would be your best bit of advice?
I'd say, coming from my experience now as a mom, and I read this quote as well, and it gets me through the difficult days. I'd say the days are long, but the years are short. And that speaks to many moms, because we see our kids grow before our very eyes, and then it's like, where did the years go? And in terms of an entrepreneurial journey, it's the same. You'll feel like, these are the most dreadful days, nothing's happening, nothing's progressing. But if you just keep pushing on, keep, you know, focused on your target, work on yourself, improving 1% every day, then when you look back, wow, the years just flew by, and you're going to be proud of yourself and what you have achieved, as long as you just keep going. There you go.
Thank you so much for taking the time and sit with me and talk about your whole journey. It's definitely one that's inspired me.
Thank you, Molly.
No, and I'm sure a lot of people listening will just really greatly appreciate it. So thank you, Myey, again, and I'm very excited to keep up with your journey.
Thank you. I'm always happy to be, part of the Foundr family and community. Thank you again for this opportunity as well.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Hey guys, we hope you're loving From Zero to Foundr and you're getting a ton of value from it. If you want access to the exact free training that led today's founder to where they are now, head to foundr.com/e-commerce training or follow the link in the show notes.